Today we will continue with the chapter The National Movement, and in it we will start the Chori Chora and its aftermath. We have already done the studied about the moderates and the radicals, and we have studied about the partition of Bengal, then how Mahatma Gandhi he emerged on the scene of this struggle for independence. We have also seen the Rowlatt Act and the Khilafat and the non-cooperation movement, and how different sections of people they participated in this movement. And so now we'll have a look at what happened at Chori Chora. Okay, while this um, non-cooperation movement it was on, so many people they were taken up as prisoners, and so Mahatma Gandhi on 1st February 1922 he announced that he would start a civil disobedience movement if the political prisoners were not released and the press was not allowed to function freely. And if you remember, when I told you that the non-cooperation movement was to be launched in stages. First stage was the surrender of titles, the second boycott, and the third a full-fledged civil disobedience movement. So you know after the first two steps, the British government they came down heavy with repression on the people, and they arrested so many people, and so Mahatma Gandhi he announced on 1st February 1922 that he will launch a full-fledged civil disobedience movement if the political prisoners were not released and some freedom of the press was given to the people. Then what happened on 5th February? A Congress procession of 3,000 workers, peasants, 3,000 peasants, they were having a peaceful march at Chauri Chora, a village in Gorakhpur district of Uttar Pradesh. And so when they were having this peaceful procession, they were fired upon by the police, and the people, the mob became angry at this, and they attacked and burnt the police station, and it caused the death of 22 policemen. And as we know that Mahatma Gandhi he was against all sorts of violence, so when he came to know about this incident, unfortunate incident, he called off the non-cooperation movement, stating that the people were still not ready for uh, non-violent passive resistance, and so he called off this movement. Now this movement was abruptly called off. It was not planned that it will be called off during this time, but because of this incident at Chori Chora, it was immediately abruptly called off. And now after the withdrawal of of this non-cooperation movement, now differences arose among between the members of the Congress as what to do next now, because they wanted that this movement it should not go into passivity, it should remain an active movement. Now some leaders like C.R. Das and Motilal Nehru they thought that it will be better to stop the to end the boycott to the legislative councils and assemblies, and that the people they should contest the elections and win elections and be a part of the legislative assemblies and all, and there somehow try to prevent the Britishers from passing out their acts and their laws, and destroy the work from within. But then there was another group which wanted that the Congress should go on doing what it was already doing, and it should invest more in constructive work, and it should try to spread education and remove the social evils and the grievances of the people. So like there was a tussle in the Congress as to what to do next. And then in the mid 1920s, the Gandhians they were able to extend their support base, and this they did through social work. So one group of the people they started to do this constructive work, and they did social work in the villages, and this proved to be very useful because when they launched the civil disobedience movement, then it came in very handy, and a lot of people they came and joined the civil disobedience movement. Then in the mid 1920s, two important developments they took place. First was the formation of the RSS, or the Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh, and the other was of the Communist Party of India. Then we had the moderates, and we have the radicals, and then we also had one more small group which were called as the revolutionaries in some parts of the country, which believed that the British rule could be overthrown only by force. And here by force they meant that if needed they should also be ready to use weapons. And so it was not a non violent struggle for these revolutionaries. So revolutionaries such as Bhagat Singh and his comrades means fellow workers, they wanted to fight colonial rule, and this was through a revolution of peasants and workers. Then in 1928, a commission which was headed by Lord Simon. Now it arrived in India and it was to examine the future reforms. Now the problem was that this commission came to India to suggest some reforms in our constitution and in our administrative system, but the problem was that there was not a single Indian representative in this body, and now they had come here to suggest reforms for India, and there was no Indian in it, and so all the parties they boycotted the Simon Commission. Then in December 1929, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru he became the president of the Indian National Congress, and so during the Lahore session of the Congress in 1929, a resolution was passed by the Congress that now they would settle for nothing less than Purna Swaraj or complete independence for India, and that 26 January 1930 would be celebrated as the Independence Day. And that is why we decided to call India a republic on this day, because of the historical importance of this day. We could not have chosen Independence Day for ourselves because that was the day when we got free, but when we had to choose for a day to call India a republic, this day, because of its historical importance, was chosen to call India a republic. Okay, so that was the withdrawal or the abrupt withdrawal of the non cooperation movement. Now we move on to Dandi March. Now, Gandhiji has already said that the third stage of the non cooperation movement was to be civil disobedience movement, but before it could be launched, the movement was abruptly called off. And then in early 1930s, the Indian National Congress they chose civil disobedience as their main tactic. Now, civil disobedience, as the name says, it is disobeying the laws, deliberately defying the laws. But when we say deliberately defy the law or deliberately break the law, we mean only those laws which are discriminatory. So colonial laws which are discriminatory to the people and not for the welfare of the people. We don't mean that you go on breaking laws which are for the security and for the law and order of the society. So now the Congress it appointed Gandhiji to organize this non civil disobedience movement, and so they took up salt law or the salt tax to break to start this civil disobedience movement with. Now, there were so many, as you will study in class 10, that there were so many demands of the Congress at this time, 11 demands to be right, to be exact. And these demands were wide ranging, from the demands of the peasants to workers to merchants and traders, and all groups and society of people they were involved, they had their grievances. But to start the civil disobedience movement, Gandhiji he selected the salt tax to break. Now, why was that? Because if he would have chosen like the grievance of the peasants or the factory workers, or people who are working on the plantations or the merchants or the traders, then only that group would have been interested, and this movement would not have become a mass movement as Gandhiji wanted, because then only it would have had an impact. Till the time it was not a mass movement, it would not have any impact, and that is why he chose the salt tax to or the salt law to break to start the civil disobedience movement with. Because Gandhiji was a very intelligent, he was a very smart man, and that salt was one thing which was used by all people, rich and poor alike, and it affected everybody, every Indian. And so that is why he chose it, and so that all sections of society they will come and join this movement. And so the salt satyagraha was a campaign of non-violent protest, so it was to be, and the civil disobedience also, just like the non-cooperation, it was to be like the non-cooperation movement, and it was to be non-violent. Now what was different from the non-cooperation movement was that in the non-cooperation movement the people were asked not to cooperate with the British, not to use their things and boycott their things. But here, the civil disobedience just went one step more, and it was now that you deliberately break the colonial laws also. Okay, so now the civil disobedience movement, it began with the salt march to Dandi on 12th March 1930, and this was the first act of organized opposition to the British after the Purna Swaraj. Mahatma Gandhi, he led the Dandi march from his Sabarmati ashram and to Dandi, to that is in Gujarat, to make salt. And all along the way he was joined by he started this with 72 of his trusted followers, and then all along the way people came and joined him. And each day he stopped for some time, and people, women, they also came in large numbers to listen to him. Gandhiji explained to them what he meant by Swaraj, and about this movement. And this was a march of about 240 miles, and he took 24 days to complete it, and each day he walked around 10 miles. And so here Gandhiji, when he reached Dandi, he collected a handful of salt from the seashore and broke the salt law. So he boiled seawater to make salt, and thereby he broke the salt law. And this march from Sabarmati to Dandi is called as the Dandi March. And how the people participated in that: women and teenagers, peasants and workers, the business community, the artisans, the rich, the poor, all people, they joined the movement. Even the tribals, uh, from the central provinces, they also, from the tribals from the central provinces, Maharashtra, Bihar and Assam, and the hill people of the Kangra, they also joined in. And when Mahatma Gandhi, he broke the salt law in Dandi at the conclusion of the march on 6th April 1930, it sparked a large scale civil disobedience movement against the British law, and the violation of the salt laws by millions of Indians. And as a result, Gandhiji, he was arrested on 5th May 1930. Now this Dandi march, it drew worldwide attention to the means this Dandi march, it got worldwide attention, and to the Indian independence movement. And this was through newspaper coverage. And the Satyagraha against the salt tax, it continued for almost a year, and it ended with Gandhiji's release from jail, and negotiations with the Viceroy Lord Irwin. And this was to attend the second roundtable conference. Now, after the civil disobedience movement, around one I think there were a large number of people, 60,000 people or more, they were arrested. And so many people were arrested. Even Gandhiji, he was in prison. All the important Congress leaders, they were also in prison. And to get the release of these political prisoners, Gandhiji, he went into a negotiation with Lord Irwin. And this is known as the Gandhi Irwin Pact. And according to this pact, Gandhiji, he will call off this civil disobedience movement, and he will be willing to attend the second roundtable conference, because the Congress has not attended the first roundtable conference, and Gandhiji has also not attended, and so it was a failure. And they wanted Gandhiji to attend the second roundtable conference. So Gandhiji would be released, and the political prisoners also were to be released. And in turn, Gandhiji, he would call off this movement, and he will be willing to attend the second round table conference. And you see, over 80,000 Indians were jailed as a result of the civil disobedience movement. So many people were put in jails, and that is why Gandhiji had to go into this pact with Lord Irwin. Now, this campaign, it had a significant effect on the British attitudes towards Indian independence. And the struggles of the people, means they all came joined together. So the united struggles of the Indian people, they brought about some fruit when the Government of India Act of 1935, it was announced. And according to this act, India, it could become a federation. Federation is a a union of states that India could become a federation if 50% of Indian states they decided to join it. But however, the provisions to go along the way and to call India a federation, now they were not implemented, but it introduced provincial autonomy, means freedom in the provinces. And so ministers of the provincial governments, now they were to be responsible to the legislature, and now they were not responsible to the British government. So provincial autonomy or freedom at the provinces level or at the state level, it was granted to the people. Then the British government announced elections to the provincial legislatures in 1937, and the Congress formed its ministries in 7 out of 11 provinces on its own, and then later on in 2 more provinces it formed a coalition government. Now during this time, a little later, you know, uh, 1939, the Second World War, it broke out in September, and as India, it was still a British colony, and so the viceroy he announced that India was automatically involved in Britain's war with Germany. So Britain was at war with Germany in the Second World War, and so the viceroy he announced that because India is a British colony, so it is also like automatically involved in the World War, and the viceroy made this announcement without consulting the Congress ministries in India. They had their government in 7 on their own and in 2 more out of 11 provinces. And so the viceroy, he did not, ask them and did not consult them, and either told them that he was going to do something like this. And so the Congress ministries, they resigned in protest. Now the British government, they wanted active participation of the Indians in the Second World War, and the Indian leaders, they were also sympathetic towards the Britishers, but the Indian leaders said that India could not fight for the independence of another country when they themselves were not free. Means when they themselves were slaves, then when they themselves were not free from foreign rule, how could they fight for some other country's independence? Okay, so that was the civil disobedience movement, and then the Quit India movement. It was the final call for immediate independence of India from the British rule, and it was started by Mahatma Gandhi on August 8th, 1942. Now, this movement was made famous by the famous slogan given by Gandhiji, do or die, that is karo ya maro. And so that was that you do everything possible to get independence, and if in the process you lose your life, so should be willing to even give up your life for your country. So, addressing the Congress delegates on the night of August 8th, Mahatma Gandhi said that I want freedom immediately. That was quit India now. If possible, now only, immediately. And so he said that I want freedom immediately, even this night, before dawn comes or before sun rises. I want it if that was possible. So I would have independence even tonight. And then he said that we shall either free India or we will die in the process. So we will fight for India's independence and maybe we'll get it while we are alive. Or if not, then we may die in the process, but we will not live to see the perpetuation, means to see the continuation of our slavery. So we will try, we will do our best. So we will either get the independence or we'll die in the process, but we'll not be willing to live like slaves anymore. But before Gandhiji could start a movement, Gandhiji and the other Congress leaders, they were arrested and the Congress was declared as illegal. But as the news of these arrests spread, so a protest movement arose and gave this was because of the suppressed anger of the people. And now the people, they were like unstoppable in this movement. The people were unstoppable, and though Gandhiji and the Congress leaders, they were all in prison, there was no one to lead the people, but still now the people were like unstoppable and they wanted independence and they were ready to do everything or to die in the process. And so all over the country there were hartals and there were strikes in factories, schools and colleges, and demonstrations everywhere. And in many people also took to violent actions, and so they attacked signs of British symbols of British authority like police stations, post offices, and they burned government buildings. They cut telephone and telegraph wires and railway lines. The students, the workers, and the peasants, they formed the backbone of this movement, whereas the upper classes, they still remained loyal to the British government. Now the government, if the people will do, then there'll be a reaction also. And so the British government, all their power, they also went all out to suppress and crush the 1942 movement. And the repression, it knew no bounds, means there were no limits as to how the British government, they suppressed the people, and they ill treated the people. And the press, it was completely destroyed and muzzled. And the demonstrating crowds, means peaceful demonstrating crowds, they were machine gunned from the air, and they were bombed from the air. And prisoners, they were tortured. The police and the military, they were like ruling supreme, and they did as they wish, means even on innocent people, women, children, even they were tortured and all that. And over uh, 10,000 people, they died in police and military firings. Uh, Now, though this movement was suppressed, but the importance of Quit India movement, it lies in the fact that this this movement demonstrated the depth of nationalist feeling in the country, means how deep the feeling was, that now the people were ready to even die for the independence of their country. And it was evident now to the British that the Indians would now settle for nothing less uh, uh, than complete independence, and they would not be able to rule India without the wishes of the people. Okay, so if you see on the other page, we left a little thing about the revolutionary movement for Indian independence and the women in the freedom struggle. So we'll have a look at it now. Uh, can you see the green boxes there on that page? Yes, class 8th?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, revolutionary movement for Indian independence. The British government, they created this, we have just now done commission under Lord Sir John Simon, and this was to report on the political situation in India in 1928. But like I told you, it did not have a single Indian representative, and so when the commission, they visited Lahore on 30th October 1928, it was met with protest. And these protests were led by Lala Lajpat Rai. And during the protest, he was beaten with lathis on the chest, and because of the injuries he sustained, he later on succumbed, or he later on died because of those injuries. Now, Bhagat Singh, he was an eyewitness to all this event, and he vowed that he will promise to take revenge, and he joined with other revolutionaries to kill the police chief who has gave the orders for lathi charge. And however, they planned everything, but it was a case of mistaken identity. They got the police chief some as someone else, and so in that Saunders, he was shot. Bhagat Singh, later on, he became involved in numerous revolutionary organizations, and he rose to the ranks of the Hindustan Republican Association. Later on, he converted it to Hindustan Socialist Republican Association. Then, the British government, they enacted the Defense of India Act to give more power to the police. Now, more power to the police was given so that they would be able to arrest the people, the political prisoners, anyone who showed dissent or who protested. And now, in response to this act, the HSRA, they planned to explode a bomb in the assembly. They just wanted the British government to listen to their demands, what they have to say. And so on April 8th, 1929, Bhagat Singh and Batukeshwar Dutt, they threw a bomb in the assembly, in the corridors of the assembly, and they shouted "Inqilab Zindabad." And after this, they gave a shower of leaflets, and they stated that it takes a loud voice to make the deaf hear. And why they exploded the bomb? They said that it was just to make the deaf Britishers hear to their demands or listen to their demands. And Bhagat Singh, he was later on tried and executed at the young age of 23. So he was killed at the young age of 23 on March 23rd, 1931, along with his fellow workers Rajguru and Sukhdev. Then, women were also involved in the freedom struggle in large numbers, and we'll have a look at Sarojini Naidu now. Now, she joined the Indian independence movement, during the revolutions, which it, revolution which took place, or the uprising of the people which took place after the partition of Bengal in 1905. Now, during 1903 and 1917, Sarojini Naidu, she came in contact with Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Rabindranath Tagore, Gandhiji, and Jawaharlal Nehru. And after meeting with Jawaharlal Nehru, she came into this freedom struggle, and in 1925 she was also elected as the president of the Congress. Then in 1931, she participated in the Round Table Conference along with Mahatma Gandhi and Pandit Malviya. Then on October 2nd, 1942, she was arrested during the Quit India movement and stayed in jail for 21 months with Gandhiji. Uh, when India became independent on 15 August 1947, Sarojini Naidu, she became the governor of the United Provinces. Now the provinces of Awadh and Agra, they were together called as the United Provinces, and so she became the governor of the United Provinces, and these United Provinces only later on came to be known as Uttar Pradesh. Then she was India's first woman governor. So she was the first woman governor of India, and she died on 2nd March 1949 after a heart attack. So that was the Quit India movement, and what happened during the Quit India movement. Now, I know it is past time, but still, I'll teach for a few minutes more. Now, in 1940, the Muslim League, they moved a resolution, and they demanded independent states or independent provinces for Muslims in the eastern and northwestern parts of the country, means parts of the country where the Muslim population was in majority. And now this resolution, it did not mention Pakistan at anywhere, or neither it mentioned partition. But why did the league, they ask for independent states for the Muslims? Now, what happened from the late 1930s? The league, they started to view the Muslims as a separate nation from the Hindus, and the Britishers were also of the view that in India two separate nations lived, Hindus and Muslims. And so the league also started to view Muslims as a separate nation from the Hindus. And then, what happened, the provincial elections of 1937, it convinced the league that Muslims were a minority. If you remember, in these elections, the Congress formed its ministries in 7 out of 11 provinces on its own, and in 2 more it formed coalition governments. So Muslim League did not fare well, and that is why the league, they were convinced that the Muslims were a majority in the country, and they will always have to come play second fiddle, means the main part would be played by the Congress in any democratic structure, and the league would just be a second fiddle. Or they thought that the Hindus would be the main leading thing, and the Muslims would be like come in second. And they also feared that maybe the Muslims will also go unrepresented in the legislative assemblies and the councils, and that is why they started to ask for the separate states for the Muslims. Now we have a look at some of the important or the popular leaders during the freedom struggle. First, we have Abul Kalam Azad. He was a Muslim scholar and a senior political leader of the Indian independence movement, and he was one of the most prominent Muslim leaders to support the unity of Hindus and Muslims. And he also opposed the partition of India on religious lines. Then he is commonly remembered as Maulana Azad, and Azad, that is free, he took as his pen name, means he wrote under the pen name of Azad. Now, Azad, he became a leader of the Khilafat movement, and during this Khilafat movement, he came into close contact with Mahatma Gandhi, and he became a supporter and an enthusiastic supporter of Gandhiji's ideas of non-violence, civil disobedience, and he also worked actively to organize the non-cooperation movements, and he committed himself totally to Gandhiji's ideals, and even promoted Swadeshi and the cause of Swaraj, fought for Swaraj for India, and he served as the president of the Indian National Congress for several years. Then we also have Chakravarti Raja Gopalachari, known as Rajaji, who was an Indian lawyer, and he was the second Governor General of independent India. And in the year 1919, Rajaji he chose to follow Mahatma Gandhi, and Mahatma Gandhi, he had just returned from South Africa in 1915, and so Rajaji he joined him in 1919, and in the year 1921 he was selected. Rajaji was selected as a general secretary of the Congress party, and then he came in close contact with Jawaharlal Nehru, Vallabhbhai Patel, Maulana Azad, Rajendra Prasad, etc., and he began to gain strength and image and stature in the party, and he became a prominent leader of the salt satyagraha in South India. At one time, he was considered as Mahatma Gandhi's heir. It was thought that he will succeed Mahatma Gandhi, and he joined as a member of the interim government. Interim is temporary government, for the time being government, means before a properly democratically elected government you could have. So for the time being government, so he also served as a member of the interim government. That was, when the Britishers they have decided that they will grant independence to India, but all the papers, everything was still not done, and India was not called as still independent, but the process was on. And so during that time, an interim government was formed. So he served as a member of the interim government in 1946, and then later on he also joined Nehru's cabinet, and he was the chief minister of Madras from 1952 to 1954. Okay, so understood till here? Is there anything that you have missed, that you have not understood, class? Yes, class 8. Ashita, Navya, Srishti.
Yes, ma'am, understood.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.